As a whole, we're pretending there is no extraterrestrial presence here on Earth. The whole is not ready to accept the reality of the situation. The whole wants to fight amongst itself for a little while longer. The whole isn't ready to think about the implications of the extraterrestrial reality. There's no doubt that this human race has been engaged with some extraterrestrial presence. There's a force here. There's something going on. There's no doubt about it now. And yet we're pretending, like a lot of us, a lot of people, like not me, of course, as everyone knows, anyone who's listened to my podcasts, they know that I understand this. But as a whole, we're not accepting this. We're just not. I mean, there's just too many people out there just, they just don't accept it. If the evidence is really good, the debunker will say, well, it must be a hoax. If the evidence is not really good, they'll say, well, it could, if somebody shows a video, like maybe some of these videos that the government has put forward, like the gimbal video, they'll say, well, it could have been just a standard aircraft, something that we have, something prosaic. We're fighting it. We're fighting this. We're fighting against the reality of the situation because we don't want to face up to it. The implications are huge because what does it mean that they're here? They're here. There's something going on. There's alien presence on this planet. And what they're doing and why they're here, what the purpose is, there's a lot of questions. I'm certain that there are people within the government and also, not many people. There's a very small percentage of people that are in the government that have access to information with regards to our extraterrestrial visitors, as well as recovered spacecraft, because I'm certain that these things have been recovered. There's been some objects that have been recovered. Not everyone's a liar. Not everyone, I believe someone like Bob Lazar was telling the truth. I think, he had no reason to really to make it up. It's not like he's made millions of dollars off coming up with this story that that he told back in the 80s and maintains to this day. There are many people among us that are fighting. Even the people in Congress, a lot of people are pretending. They're very concerned. They're more concerned, actually. This is really funny. When you hear in this recent, a couple of weeks ago when the Intelligence Committee met with some Pentagon officials, and you hear this amongst the committee members, they're more concerned if these objects are being controlled by China or Russia. Well, how do you know if it's extraterrestrials? Why you're not concerned about that? I mean, you wouldn't be concerned. Man, what if what they're up to is even worse than what China or Russia would be up to? But the point is that the China and Russia stuff is just nonsense. It's just not real. Because these objects have been around for a long time, for decades, since the 40s, for at least 75 years that we know of, longer than that we know of, because since during World War II, a lot of people start noticing these things in the military. They were called Foo Fighters back then during the 40s, in the early to mid 40s, when people were fighting in the Pacific or over Germany, during attacks from the air. A lot of pilots and personnel on these planes saw objects. People start noticing them then. Now, they've been around for a lot longer than that, of course, as many of us already know, but there's no point in getting into that because, before 1947, when we really started noticing these things, I mean, just people didn't talk about it that much. It was, nobody could. We weren't smart enough to even consider that these things might be from outer space. But by 1947, when they started showing up, people's imaginations, figured it out. It doesn't take much of an imagination to figure out, okay, these objects, there's no way. I mean, the United States is the biggest superpower in 1947. I mean, they're the only country at that time that has nuclear weapons, that had an atomic bomb at its disposal, okay? So, by that point, there's only one reasonable explanation, is that it's back then it wasn't Russia or China. I mean, for sure. I mean, they couldn't. Nobody in the world had the kind of technology that we had at that time, at that moment. And still, even to this day, we don't have the kind of technology that some of these craft back then were exhibiting. The to be able to make these right angle turns and fly at 10,000 miles per hour, and it's just doing ridiculous things that our aircraft cannot do. Basically, what these objects have done, what they did and what they're capable of doing is that they fly rings around anything that we have, and they can move faster, way faster than anything that we have. I mean, these things are beyond belief. But yeah, that's what we're doing right now. We're fighting it. We sit back and we say, well, a lot of us, not me, of course, like I said, but it's most, there's a lot of us, that sit back and wonder. I wonder if it's China or Russia. Okay, I concede there might be some things out there that might be Chinese or Russian, but for the most part, these things that are doing things that we know we cannot do, that humankind has not achieved. I mean, we just know. Anybody with a brain could say, well, wait a minute, we're not capable of making an object that could move like that. I mean, and some of these things are big enough and they seem like they're piloted. There's pilots inside. If we had something like that, I mean, the pilots would die. You couldn't go that fast and then stop on a dime and then make a turn, a right angle turn. Because the being inside would die. But I would imagine that these beings that are here, whatever they're up to, they figured things out that we just haven't figured out yet. And we might not ever figure out. We might not be around long enough to figure it out. Because, I mean, just look at us. Look at the whole world right now. Look at the violence. I mean, I would imagine that any advanced race that's here right now, they're looking at us and they're seeing what happens here. I mean, for one thing, let's go back here. For a race to become as advanced as our visitors are, and who knows how many different planets they hail from, who knows how many different species are here, or how many are involved. Do they all know that they're all involved, or who knows? There's a lot of questions we just don't have answered. But realistically, there are they would have to get to achieve what they've achieved. I can't imagine that that at this point in their in their existence that they're still a violent race. I can't imagine, like, from whatever planets these things come from, right? I just don't see any of their beings, like any of their type, any of their kind, walking into, grabbing some sort of weaponry and killing a bunch of innocent people. I just don't see those kind of things happening. If you're able to get that advanced technologically, there's no way you could have got there without coming to some sort of epiphany about violence. I mean, I would imagine that any civilized race, any civilized being, there has to be violence in the past. We're still not out of that violent stage, but our technology keeps advancing. I mean, look what's happening over in Europe right now with Ukraine. I mean, innocent people getting killed. One maniac wants to, take over a country, and I'm not getting into politics here. I'm just, this is the reality of the situation, right? I don't want to get into I don't like talking about politics when I'm talking about UFOs, but I'm just trying to look at the whole planet as a whole. You have people here, in the United States that don't like other people because of the color of their skin. I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, in Buffalo recently, we had a gunman walk into a supermarket specifically to kill people because he doesn't like them because of the color of their skin. See, I don't see us getting too far if we don't figure things out. Like, I don't see us becoming as advanced as the extraterrestrial visitors here if we don't figure things out. Like, we're just gonna destroy ourselves eventually. Eventually, somebody's gonna hit a button, and somebody else is gonna hit a button, and next thing you know, there's a whole bunch of buttons getting pressed, and the next thing you know, the world is finished. Nuclear holocaust, and the survivors will die from the fallout. That's where we're heading. That's where we're heading. And technology will pretty much, any kind of advancements in technology, you'd have to start all over again. I mean, if there's any survivors after it's all said and done, which it's possible that there won't be. I mean, in addition to the nuclear holocaust that we're setting ourselves up for, I mean, there's the climate crisis. There is climate change. It's been determined. 99% of the world's scientists say that we're heading toward a disaster. It's happening. The ice caps are melting. Sea levels are rising. It's a matter of fact. I mean, look at the disasters, the natural disasters. The instance has increased over the years. It keeps getting bigger, more and more, worse and worse, more disastrous, more, all the time. But as a whole, we're pretty much ignoring. I mean, there's some people that accept what's going on, but there's just not enough of us ready to do anything about it. There's not enough of us ready to stop the violence. Not enough of us who want to stop war and try to all get along somehow. Because if we don't, we're not going to make it to whatever level these visitors are at. But let's look at it from their point of view. They're here and they're looking at us. They're watching us. They see us. They see us. They're viewing us. And what do they see? I mean, they see wild beasts for the most part. I mean, not all of us are, right? I think there's a lot of people. Most people are good. But even the good people, a lot of the good people, we're sitting back and allowing this disaster to keep getting worse. Whether it's war or violence or hatred or racism and nuclear proliferation. I mean, we just allow it to keep getting worse and worse. And there's visitors here watching this. Why are they watching it? Why are they here? Are they concerned maybe? Is there a concern among them that, if they get to a certain level here, we're going to have to do something about it? Maybe that's what this is about. Maybe they're watching them to see if we get control of ourselves. Maybe that's what's happening here. They're watching us to see if we can get a grip. Because right now we don't have a grip. I mean, we just don't. Because as a whole, we're allowing all these things to happen. Right? As a whole, we're ignoring, we're pretending that there's no presence here, despite all the decades and decades worth of evidence that's compiled. I mean, there's no question. I know for a fact there's a lot of people like me who've seen one of these craft up close and know for a fact that there's no way. There's no way this thing that I saw could have been made by humans. There's just no way. Where it came from, I don't know. Who's operating it? I can't imagine it. It's humans. It couldn't be human beings. These things, when you see them up close, you understand. Okay, now I understand. When I saw it, I was like, oh, yep, I get it now. There's somebody here. There's something here. And they're seeing us. As a whole, we're not accepting it. Still, we're trying to. There seems to be an effort that we're trying to get everyone on board with this. But again, at the same time, we need to get a grip. We need to come together. Because, again, what if they're looking at us and looking and saying, wow, look at these animals. As a whole, we're acting like animals. As a whole, we're any maniac could walk into a store and buy an assault weapon and go and, kill, 100 people. Just like that. It doesn't take much. It's, people say, well, it's your right. Okay, it's your right. Then if I'm allowed to have that, shouldn't I be able to keep an atomic bomb in the basement just in case somebody breaks into my house? I mean, where do we end it? But anyhow, I digress. I don't want to get, again, I'm trying to stay away from politics. I'm very upset about what happened recently, in the last few weeks. In Buffalo, that was bad. And then now, of course, with the little kids in Texas, I'm very upset. And we got to get a grip. And we got to figure these things out. And then, of course, on top of all of this, we have the unending wars and concerns. I mean, we have a dictator in Russia who's just, I want Ukraine and I'm going to kill all these people, kids, citizens. I don't care. I want that land for whatever reason, insanity, power hungry, whatever. I mean, what's the reason? What's the reason? And we as a whole are sitting back and letting it happen for the most part. Yeah, we're helping out Ukraine fight, but I don't know because we allowed it to get to this situation. How do we allow like one person to become a that should never be. We should not have dictators, because you always have the possibility of someone losing their marbles. But again, I digress. I'm getting ahead. See, again, I can't help myself because I'm trying to paint a picture here of what's going on. Because what's going on is that there's things here. There are beings here observing us, and this is the kind of stuff they're seeing. And is it going to get to? Are they just observing us and trying to determine whether or not we're going to get a grip or not? And if we don't get a grip, because we are advancing technologically through all this, and if somehow we don't end up blowing ourselves up, and we somehow able to get through all of this without killing blowing the whole thing up totally, right? Without destroying the whole world totally, and we get this to a point where we actually, could travel into space like these beings, or come close to that, where we could travel great distances through space, like obviously these things must be doing, these visitors. If we once we start getting too close to that, maybe they have a plan here. I mean, okay, we can't let them. They never got a grip on them. They can't even get along with themselves. So guess what? We're gonna have to just blow the whole thing up. We're gonna have to get rid of these people because we can't let them just wander the galaxies. We can't let them wander space and then go to one of our planets and start a war with us, because that's what we'll do if we can't get a grip here. If we can't get along amongst ourselves, amongst fellow human beings, how are we going to get along with beings that might be not human, might be might evolve from insects? Like, how are we going to get along with something like that? We're not, unless we get a grip here with ourselves right now. Because we're out of control, and we're not. As a whole, we're pretending. We are pretending, right? That everything's gonna be okay. Now, a lot of times everyone gets mad. There's protests and this and that, but still nothing gets done. Because as a whole, somehow, for some reason, we're just accepting it. Our political leaders are either weak or monsters. One or the other, monsters, or they're weak. One or the other, because they just don't. They're beholden to billionaire donors. All of them, all of these politicians, both sides, and they don't care. They're concerned. It seems to me, with themselves, and and they don't care what happens. Some of them, I think, maybe a small handful do, but I think for the most part, it's just. They're just concerned about themselves, money and, power, and some are worse than others, it depends on the level. Some are complete idiots, actually. Some of them shouldn't even be in power whatsoever. They don't have two brain cells to rub together. But we're not fixing the problem. We could possibly see another. I mean, basically we are. We're seeing genocide basically in Europe right now. We have mass murders. You look at the in the United States. We're like on an island when it comes to just violence with guns. I mean, people don't. It just keeps happening, and we don't do anything about it. Like we don't get it. We're not getting a grip. We're violent predators, and we're terrible. So again, if this keeps continuing and our technology keeps advancing, at some point, these visitors here that are obviously, that we're pretending aren't here as a whole, we're pretending they're not here as a whole, what are they going to do? What choice would they have? What choice would they have? They'd have to destroy us. That's the only answer, because we're not getting a grip. We can't get a grip on things. So we got to get a grip.